What's with you today? Yesterday you were normal, and today you're like the Chinese guy from the Karate Kid. What's with today? Today. Welcome to You Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, this is Liam, and this week we watched 1995's Empire Records, a coming-of-age drama about a day in the life of staff at a record store. For you younger listeners, if we have any, a record store is like Spotify in real life, a place where you could buy CDs, vinyl, and cassettes. And I am not ready to try and explain to you what a cassette is. Empire Records is open till midnight, and it's Rex Manning Day. My question is, does everything interesting in these people's lives happen in this single day, or is this an everyday occurrence? Is Joe that cool older guy, or is he just a very strange man that hangs out with teenagers? Well, except for Burko, because that guy is 45 if he's a day. Does Eddie actually work at Empire? But, I mean, Empire Records did fail at the box office, and it's a rare case of the soundtrack surpassing the film, but it has now become a cult classic, and is finally appreciated for the masterpiece it is. Or is it? After last week's surprising turn of events with Return of the Jedi, is Liam going to hold a grudge against my choice, or is he going to agree with me, like he rightly should? And I've just realised I put a winky face on my intro that nobody can see.
Wink. You should have just audibly said wink.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to tear this film to pieces, but I watched this film originally back in the late 90s, and I remember nothing about it except for Liv Tyler for obvious reasons. Now, I watched this again 3 days ago, and I still don't remember much about it. I'm like, I don't know if this film is good or if it's bad. I'm not sure if nothing happened or everything happened. All I can say unequivocally is this is a really weird film, and so much that this had a terrible critical response, totally bombed the box office, and I understand every single review. If you want to tear this film down, tear this film to pieces, it's really easy. Really easy. It has so many faults. But at the same time, if someone comes to me and say that they love this film, I can kind of understand that as well. I can see how you could latch onto it, especially the element of youth. I mean, it actually works better as a 90s kind of time capsule. Yeah. As somebody, in our early 40s, you go back and watch this, there's so much nostalgia attached to it. We didn't have Empire Records. We had Virgin Megastore. It's just a big part of our youth going to record stores. But yeah, as a movie, I'm just not sure at all how I feel about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is bad. And even some of the stuff you mentioned, like Joe, what the fuck is going on with Joe, man?
So, I mean, what I will say, first of all, I think if you catch this, or if this movie catches you at the right time in your life, I think it becomes that love piece that you said. So for
me, it didn't click for me when I was younger, but I get it. Yeah,
but yeah, so it did with me. I watched it probably late teens was when I first watched it.
It's the right time for sure.
Yeah, and absolutely loved it. But that was around the time then I was watching Clerks and Mallrats and.
The thing is, this film just isn't as good as those.
I'm not saying it's not, but
I totally understand. But I think the reason that this film didn't kind of catch on the same way, like I said, I appreciate it has a cult following, but this film has disappeared from the mainstream almost completely. What this is 30 odd years later, almost. And the reason for that, as I said, because fundamentally, this film isn't as good as those films. Tonally, it has that kind of same manic 90s energies as, it feels almost Kevin Smith-esque at times. Certainly the way the dialogue's delivered, it feels more ratish, kind of clerksy. In many respects to me, it feels a bit like, and this sounds a bit harsh, but it feels like a poor man's Breakfast Club. It's going for that same vibe, like a group of teenagers all having their own individual issues, all kind of in the same place. Obviously, that's different because they're forced together, whereas, these are like-minded people, but they're all having their own unique problems. But the problem is everything is too underdeveloped. There's too many ideas, and one of the biggest issues of the film is just there's too many characters.
Thank you. I wanted to say that is the one problem as well, is that because I've always wanted to mention, does everybody that works for Empire Records work today? Because
they're all at the same time. Joe's the worst manager in the world, make no mistake. Yeah.
Because, I mean, they're all there for a start. And Eddie, does Eddie work at Empire?
I was trying to figure out, because I don't know all these characters. So I was looking through it, and I was like, you could easily lose 3 or 4 characters from this film. Burko, who was played by Coyote Shivers, he was actually supposed to be played by Billy by Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day.
Yeah.
And that would make more sense. If that was like a big name you understood and he was just popping in as like, oh, I play in a band, the role would work. But because he's, no offense to the actor, but he's like a nobody to me. He's just a whatever dude. I'm just like, what is he doing in this film? And does he need to be in it? And then you've got like Eddie, he could definitely go. And I would even argue that Warren, and I know some people probably love Warren, the whole shoplifting thing. I don't even know if his name is Warren. I don't get the joke. Is his name Warren or isn't it? I don't want
He just tells everyone his name's Warren Beatty, and then they just all stick with it.
Oh, of course, yeah, they call him Warren. Well, yeah. Warren could arguably go. His whole, like, there's too much going on in this film for that narrative of part of the film to exist. Just get rid of that. It just makes no sense.
There's a lot, isn't it? There's like, because they delve completely, and I will reiterate, I love this film. But there are, as you said, there are faults that we will pick out today.
Mm-hmm.
And Warren is a big one because you're right. They go too much into the Warren side of it. And then there's not enough like with Lucas. Like this whole thing with Lucas where he realizes that it's about to be a music town or wherever it is. So he drives 3 hours
to Atlantic City. Yeah,
Atlantic City from Delaware.
Why is this film set in Delaware? When I found out it was in Delaware, all I could think of is in Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Hey, we're in Delaware. I'm like, yeah, because nobody knows shit about Delaware. But okay, fair enough. It's set in Delaware.
3 hours, like so 6 hours in total. So that's most of the night.
Yeah.
To lose the money, and then there's no really, and then he comes back and like my opening quote said, he becomes like Mr. Miyagi apparently because he wasn't like that before, and then.
It's underexplained and it's poorly written because he goes out there, and to me it was so confusing because at the end it was almost like they tried to tie it up and suggesting that he knew what he was doing and he was trying to force Joe's hand.
Yeah. But
when he loses the money, he's clearly devastated. So I'm like, is he gone there? He's trying to bet. Clearly doesn't know how gambling works. He's like, oh, do I just throw a 7? Like, all right, sure thing, Lucas. Then he loses all the money. He's devastated. But then afterwards, it almost suggests like that was his grand plan all the time. And like that part of the story, it's the opening thing. Oh, well, this is going to be the core narrative of the film. You'll have all the characters having their own individual issues, but this is going to be the core story. And it just disappears. And then suddenly reappears at the end because they're like, shit, shouldn't we deal with this? And that, again, beyond the fact that there was like too many characters, there's just too many stories. Like, is this a movie about saving a record store? Is it an anti-capitalist movie? Is it a movie about being young? Is it a celebration of youth or a rumination on the issues of youth? It's all of these things and none of these things because it doesn't commit to anything. And it doesn't even commit to a single character. Like, who the fuck is the star of this film?
The record shop.
That's not a bad answer. Smart ass. But it was like, well, like I said before, I hadn't seen this film for years. And when I was trying to remember anything about it, I was like, jokes aside, I could really only remember anything about Liv Tyler. I was like, well, why can't I remember more of the film? And then I was watching the credits at the start and it said, and Liv Tyler. I was like, wait, and Liv Tyler? I thought Liv Tyler was the star.
She gets she's at the front of the poster.
Yeah.
But she gets like billed after Warren and Coyote Shivers. Like
in fairness, she is actually billed above them because she gets the and. The and is important.
Yeah. We have mentioned this before, yeah. But
at the same time, I thought, and again, you'd see the poster and you'd assume as much, that she was the star of this film, but she's not actually in it a huge amount. But then at the same time, I was like, okay, who should be at the front of the poster? Like, I don't know, because nobody gets enough time for them to really feel like, one, the star of this film, or two, to feel important. Things just happen. And the one that really got me at the start of the film was with Deb. Deb shows up at work. She shaves her head. She reveals that she's tried to cut her wrist. And you know what? We don't give a fuck because I don't know who she is. Like, if that happened halfway through the film, I'd be like, oh, well, she's having issues. I know about her character, at least, have a hint about it. And now she's shaving her head because she's clearly going off the deep end. But instead, she's just some random character we're completely unaware of, comes in, shaves her head. Oh, I slipped my wrist and tried to kill myself. I'm like, wait, who are you? And why do I give a fuck? It's just too much.
What's funny about that is not the fact that she shaves her head. It's the uncomfortable way that she cuts her hair with those scissors first. Because she's got the scissors so close to her wrists anyway, as she's holding her hair to cut it, and the sound it's making, like those rusty ass scissors cutting through.
I know. I was thinking, I was like, dude, I honestly thought, I was like, she could have so easily cut her fingers off here.
Yeah.
It was so clumsy. But then Deb is clumsy because later on, when Liv Tyler's character is Corey, isn't it?
Corey.
Is that it? Corey. When she has her like little nervous breakdown because she has a drug problem or whatever, again, it doesn't really matter in this film because nothing really latches on, I don't think. The way she kind of dips her head in water is like she's trying to drown her. It's the strangest scene when she's like, oh, this might work for you. Don't splash water on your face. I'm just going to dunk your face into a sink. She's just a clumsy girl, Deb. That's all it is.
Is she taking a piss or just a shit as well when she's talking to...
Oh, I assume it's a pee. Listen, we can't understand that. Girls, the whole thing with girls all going to the toilet together, it's just one of those things. That is a completely different scene if it's two dudes and one of them's taking a dump, you know?
So the one thing I wanted to say, when Deborah does shave her head, Lucas did something that made me laugh out loud. It's when AJ is trying to tell, why'd you do this? Why did you slit your wrists and things like that? And Lucas, being his Mr. Miyagi thing, comes along and says, she's in the store, she'll be fine. But before that, he rubs her head. I did find that actually quite charming. But again, that reminds me of another thing about this film. And I think it's an issue that it's cribbing from too much. You have Lucas and you have, who's that terrible Matthew Lillard ripoff character? The really Beavis and Butthead one? Ethan Embry.
Yeah. I fucking can't stand him. We'll get to him in a minute. But they often break the fourth wall a la kind of, Ferris Bueller. And again, it's this kind of nod that they're trying to be John Hughes, but then also trying to be 90s, and none of it quite works. And that's when this film, I think, is often its poorest, when it's trying to be something akin to John Hughes. Because the first part, as I said, feels more 90s style Kevin Smith, like this irreverent comedy. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, towards the end, they try and make it matter on an emotional level, and you're like, there's nothing to back this up, and I just don't give a shit about it. And that's one of my biggest issues with the film. But at the same time, and again, this is going to sound like I'm constantly shitting on this film, I did actually quite like it. Like the characters, they're really lame, but at the same time, I kind of quite liked hanging around with them, as it were, for 90 minutes.
That's the thing, man. It's interesting because with all its faults, and I won't argue with you, there are many, it's still just, for me, a charming film. Just, you have these little things like their opening scene where they have to open the store and whoever's turn it is to do it gets to play the music. That Queen Sarah Saturday tune seems is absolutely perfect. Whenever I hear it, I just go straight back to that scene where they're all cleaning and singing. And Corey is putting way too much sugar into her tea. All the teas, because that's a lot of fucking sugar. Yeah.
Well, no, that's what it does, though. Like you said, it's almost that intangible sense of just being charming. But what it does, especially if you're a bit older, but I think it also works if you are 19 and you have that kind of job, is that it captures the magic of having a job in your youth. Yeah. Albeit it's a perfect version of it where, you work at a cool record store and you're working alongside Liv Tyler. That probably wasn't the reality.
I love how you're obsessing over Liv Tyler. I was always the Renee Zellweger. And
you're out of your mind.
It might be the fact that she she was promiscuous and I was a teenager watching this.
Liv Tyler is we'll get to her in a second, but she is unreal in this film. But I have such fond memories of working in Debenhams because I hung around with people who I didn't usually hang around. They were like just my work friends. And it was like, I didn't really care for the job or something, but I genuinely looked forward to going into work and like hanging around with those people. And it was almost like this kind of like separate ecosystem from like my usual friends. It was like, I have my usual friends. And then I've got this weird group of work friends and we all kind of get on and, it was just this whole separate thing. And I look back with genuine fond memories. And this totally captures that, where you're like, I'm not convinced all these people would necessarily hang out together, but they all work together. Sure, like you said, I'm not sure why 17 of them are all working at the same time in a record store, or why that record store is open until midnight. Yeah. Again, Joe is a terrible manager. But, I need to get back to the point. So you were a Renee Zellweger guy rather than a Liv Tyler dude.
Growing up it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, the reason why is gotta be the
that she was promiscuous,
where she wears that apron scene.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that would have quite the impact. But that was one of the reasons that this film was memorable to me. You got to remember, this was 95. I was 13. This,
Yeah.
these are the big years in your life, as it were, kind of thing. And someone like Renée Zellweger or Liv Tyler can have an impact on you. And it's like, I saw a picture of her recently of Liv Tyler from like 1995, and it genuinely stopped me in my tracks. It's not even a sexual thing. It's like, I just want to take her for a walk on the beach. I want to hold her hand. I want to take her out for dinner, walk her to the door and say, I've had a lovely evening, and then just leave her the fuck alone.
Oh,
it's
so
like
sweet. I want to take Renée Zellweger into the copy room.
and absolutely rinse her.
Yeah.
When I think of Liv Tyler in 1995, she's like the female equivalent of Michelangelo's David. I honestly think she's beyond taste. It's like an objective beauty. You don't see David, I'm not sure if you've seen Michelangelo's David in the flesh in Florence, but when you see it, it goes beyond the idea that, this is good for sculpture, this is good art. It's just objectively brilliant. It fundamentally renders personal taste moot. And that's how strongly I feel about Liv Tyler in 1995. I think she's like just beyond, like, it doesn't matter what your taste is. You just look at her and go, that is a beautiful human being.
You could give people a million guesses about what we would mention on this podcast. Nobody would ever get that you linked Empire Records to Michelangelo's David.
No, specifically Liv Tyler.
No, the Empire Records podcast has now
I know.
brought up Michelangelo's David.
Wait, we're a podcast of culture. What can I say? I
mean, I love how you turned around and you said, I don't know if you've seen it in the flesh. Like, we have Geography by Liam. We've never had Geography by Rob, because unless I say, oh yeah, when I went to Spain that one time.
Well, honestly, we're not going to turn this into a Michelangelo's David thing, but that had a tangible impact on me. Like, I like art as much as the next dude, but when you see it, you're like, that is unbelievable on an objective level, and that's how I feel about it. But the thing is, supposedly, it's not just me. The cast felt the same way. They were like, I think it was, what's his name? Ethan Embry. Yeah. Said he had like just the biggest crush in the world, but he was just like, listen, everyone had a crush on her. It was like everyone was aware that she was something special in this film. But it does bring me to the point that Liv Tyler's had like such a weird career, because she's been in some of the biggest, like Armageddon was one of the biggest films in the 90s. She was in Lord of the Rings, one of the biggest trilogies of all time. But it was like, she was never quite leading lady, was she? She never quite made it. Like, she's been in some big films, but she's never opened a movie herself, as far as I can tell.
No, the only one I can think of is the one with the guys with the masks come and stalk her for the night. Yeah,
but that's like a mid-range film. But I know what you mean. But you put it this way, watching this film back in 1995, you would have never looked at the cast and gone, Renée Zellweger is going to be the one. Like, don't be wrong. I totally understand why you wanted to fuck her. She is like, she exudes that sexual quality in the same way. And again, to cross it over with Kevin Smith films, she looks almost exactly the same as Amy from Chasing Amy. What's her name? Elisa Jones?
I know the one you're about.
She's in Mallrats as well.
Yeah, it used to be is Mrs. I think it's Elisa Jones, isn't it?
Yeah. She's got like the same. Not only do they look similar, they've got a very similar voice, that raspy voice. They've got the same kind of energy in this one.
Lauren Adams.
Oh, sorry, I mixed up the names. She's just got the same kind of energy, but she exudes that sexuality, and she is great in this. But I don't think I would have, or anyone would have picked her out in 1995 and said, oh, she's going to be the one who goes on to open movies. Because Renée Zellweger, for like a good 5-6 year stretch, she was one of the biggest actresses in the world.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that kind of necessarily comes through in this film. But
I want to bring up, right, your just blasé mention of having a problem with Mark. Because Ethan Embry as Mark, I think, is fucking great.
Oh, dude, I can't stand him. What I hate in films, and we've run into this in the past a few times, is I really don't like mugging. And he mugs like a motherfucker in this film. And like, he's always gurning. And I know what they're going for. It's like a Beavis and Butthead style thing where he's always giggling. He's weird as shit. The whole scene with him and that girl listening to music is fucking mental. I mean, where he tries to kiss her.
That is close to sexual assault.
Well, it's just like, first he thinks it's okay to just kiss her when she's got her eyes closed. I know it's the mid-90s. It's not 2023, but okay, it's weird. But then he goes out of his way to like kiss her toe. Why isn't she wearing fucking shoes? This film is so weird. It's so weird. Right. But no, I do not like his character.
What we are bringing back is Rob's Mount Rushmore.
Oh, he's not fucking going on.
He's going on my Mount Rushmore.
With fucking Zug and Boog, whatever their fucking names are.
From what? From the Wraith?
Yeah. What are they called?
Boog.
I can't remember.
Gutter Boy.
Gutter Boy. Oh, yeah. Well, that I couldn't remember the names. That was legitimately exactly what I was thinking as I said that about Gurning, and about the fact that we've had issues in the past. I don't like those kind of characters. The only thing I'll say to this film is that he's not in enough for it to be impactful. And I think you do need that kind of stoner character. And I know because they wanted to keep it PG-13, they removed all the smoking weed in this film. There was supposed to be quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So he just eats brownies, which are clearly weed brownies. Like I said, I think the film needs that kind of character. I think he's turning it up a bit too much. And as I said, I know this was before Scream, but to my mind, I'm just like, oh, well, this is the kind of role that Matthew Lillard would have got maybe 2 or 3 years later and would have done a better job at. Like, he's played that kind of character in a bunch of films. The difference is he's just more likable.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like they're trying to cash in on Dazed and Confused from 1993, which is that kind of coming of age thing with the teenagers and stuff. But they kind of just, I know they fail on that path. I'm not going to deny they do fail on what they're trying to achieve. But again, and it's really hard to pinpoint, but there's just something so charming about this movie. But I'll tell you what it's not. It's definitely not Joe. Because although I love this movie, there's something creepy about the one only manager, because he doesn't own the store at this moment in time. He's just the manager. And the rest of them are except for Coyote Shivers, because like I said, that dude's fucking 45.
Yeah.
But the rest of them are meant to be teenagers, which leads me to a valid point, right? They're clearly meant to be teenagers. I mean, Corey's still in high school. AJ is in love with her, but AJ says, my landlord raised my rent. So
he's obviously an undercover cop. I don't know what the fuck's going on there. It's so weird. Like, wait, how old are you? You're supposed to be in high school?
Yeah.
I've got loads of issues with AJ as well. He is... The problem is this film, I actually think the girls are quite interesting. I think Liv Tyler's character is potentially quite interesting. I think Renée Zellweger's character is quite good in this film. A lot of the boys are quite whatever. Lucas is potentially interesting, but his whole narrative gets swept under the rug, as we already mentioned. AJ is so 90s bland. It's beyond all belief. And his love story with Corey at the end, when they try and force it on you, it feels so unearned. It feels so like it just drops out. And a lot of things towards the end of this film where they suddenly decide to try and wrap it up. Everything feels unearned. Everything feels like it just drops out of the fucking sky. You got their love story closing up. I'm like, I didn't even know they had a love story. You've suddenly got Renée Zellweger's character. She wants to be a rock star all of a sudden? I was like, did they even fucking mention that in the film? It's so dumb.
Liv Tyler didn't even know she had a love story. She's there going, I do love you. I didn't know I loved you, but now I know I love you.
Yeah, she is literally speaking for the character. Like, well, it wasn't written that I loved you, but now it is. So, yeah, I guess we're in love with each other.
AJ does a dick move. What's the dick move he does?
I haven't. Well, there's a lot of dick moves towards the end of this film, but
it's at the beginning of the film.
Okay.
No?
No.
Burning a CD just because you don't want to listen to it again. What a dick move.
That is a bit of a dick move. But then there's so many dick moves towards the end when, again, they try and enforce kind of passion and importance towards the end of this film, where all of a sudden everybody has a mental breakdown. Everybody's like bright and breezy. Everyone's having fun. But as soon as things go wrong, like the way Liv Tyler's character turns on Renée Zellweger is so fucking harsh. And just so out of nowhere and so out of character. I was like, what the hell's going on here? And suddenly everybody's at each other's throats. I was like, Jesus Christ, what the hell's going on here? And then you realize, oh, well, there's only like 10 minutes of this film left because we've spent so much time having really pointless musical montages. Yeah. There's like 5 of them. And yes, they're fun because, as you said, the music in this film is really cool. And in and of itself, it kind of captures the spirit of youth, blah, blah, blah. But from a narrative perspective, it adds nothing. That's the bit it forgot. If you go back to like Rocky IV, for instance, it's like everyone makes a joke about the fact that half the film is musical montages. Well, yeah, but when the musical montage is on, as rudimentary as it might be, it is moving the narrative on. It's telling you, it's like, oh, he's still sad about Apollo. Oh, he wants to fight Ivan Drago. Oh, he's training to get ready for the fight, whatever it might be. In this film, no, they just dance. It's almost like they take out 30 minutes of potential exposition and just kind of replace it with dance, which tells no story whatsoever.
I don't have a problem with it because, again, it's meant to be a day in the life, so there's just the day moves on, so different musical tastes move on. Do you know, so I
get that, and I can understand why. Say you've seen this film 100 times, and you know the way the story is going, and maybe at this point you don't even care. Those musical numbers in and of themselves are quite fun. But the problem is, it means there's no room for character development. There's just none. And that is the biggest issue with the film. You have 17 characters, and I know I'm overdoing it. You have a whole bunch of characters, and none of them develop beyond the
I'm wondering if you really need that development in something like this, where it's just meant to be that one day.
Yeah, but like I said, though, once you get to the end of the film, and you have all these things happening, like the Corey and AJ thing, sorry, I keep just calling her Renée Zellweger. What's the character's name again? Gina, when she suddenly, being a rock star in front of Empire Records when they're having the party, which again makes no sense. We'll get to that.
I love that song, by the way.
Yeah, it is a good song, but again, none of it matters. You just don't give a shit. That's the biggest issue.
I love that song from the film because if you listen to that song anywhere else, there's no Renée Zellweger version.
Yeah, you can't get it, can you?
Did you catch what Rex Manning said after he came out of the counting room with Gina?
Fuck, we haven't even mentioned Rex Manning, which is amazing.
Did you catch?
No.
So he walks out of the room, everyone's staring at him, and he just looks at him and goes, "What? No applause?" I mean, to be fair, if I got to nail Gina in the count room, I'd want some. All
right, we'll get to the Rex Manning thing in a second. First, because you did mention it, we've got to mention Joe, right? Again, I feel like this is like the other movie this could have been. It's like this could have been an Oliver-style story with Joe as Fagin, if Fagin wasn't a dick. If we're not going to make out that he's weird and he's just basically taking kids off the street and giving them jobs. But I was like, is that the story, or is this movie about Joe is the worst store manager of all time? Like, it could also be that story, because he loses all of his cash, he employs loads more people than he needs, he's open until midnight for just because. One girl is suicidal, who he just basically ignores.
Midnight thing is because of Mitch, mind, because Mitch just wants money, doesn't he? He hates the stuff.
But it doesn't make financial sense. Like in Delaware, like maybe if you were working in fucking New York, and it's a 24-hour city, but I mean, I gotta be honest, geography, I know this is, one of these things we kind of come back to. I've not been to Delaware, but I suspect it's not a 24-hour city. I just don't think financially it makes sense. But he's got a girl who has a drug problem, just ignores that. They have a fake funeral during working hours, that's no problem. He has a middle-aged man, aforementioned Rex Manning.
Yeah.
He has sex with a teenage staff member in the stockroom, and he basically just listens in. He doesn't even do anything about it until he comes out. He's just like, well, I gotta let him finish up. Gentleman's prerogative, He's a terrible store manager and a very strange character. And his performance, I feel like he's trying to go for somewhere between Al Pacino and Andy Garcia, but I can't remove the concept that he looks like the lead singer from Creed. As if that's the vibe he's got. Or this won't work on you, but he reminds me of early 2000s Liverpool footballer from Italy, Alberto Aquilani. That won't mean anything to you, will it?
No,
I didn't think so. But yeah, that whole narrative is underplayed. Then there's the Rex Manning thing, which is, why is Corey so into Rex Manning? It makes no fucking sense.
It's strange, isn't it? Because all the Rex Manning stuff that she's got, like when she's kissing his picture and all that, that's from Rex Manning about 20 years ago. Because now you're seeing this dude, whoever the fuck this dude is, and you're thinking, It's like it's like seeing Ron Jeremy porn in the 70s and then going, I'm going to fuck that dude now. And you see that dude now and it's like, really?
Well, it's just weird because they're trying to obviously send the idea that these kids are fundamentally quite cool. It's like the whole thing is like, it's anti-capitalist. We're selling music. We're not selling out. Fuck the man or whatever the hell he says, which again, down that totally underplayed all that stuff, but we'll allow it. But then she's like, and again, Liv Tyler in 1995, like she could literally have anyone in the world. She is so striking. Like I won't even say hot. She is so striking.
You're
it's
obsessed.
Almost. I don't think that's weird. I think she is almost ludicrously attractive. Like her father Steven Tyler. He's striking, but he's not hot. She is both, which I think is a rare combination. The point is, she could have her pick of anyone, and she wants fucking Rex Manning with his orange skin and his ridiculous shirts. It just makes it doesn't even make sense. Why is Rex Manning going to that store all the time? Why do they have Rex Manning Day?
Well, he's not going to that store all the time.
No,
he's trying to sell his new record, isn't he? So he's got to go do autograph signing. So
yeah,
he's not a big name anymore, is he? So I mean, what was her name? Jane. So. Jane is trying to get Middle America buys you records. You've got to go and be a face to him. So wherever the records are being sold the most, that's obviously where he's got to show up. He thinks he's a bigger star than he is.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
So this is what's, and then like Debbie Mazar, who plays Jane, is just like, you know what, I'm fucking done with this dude. So there's because she works for a company that is like marketing Rex Manning. So there's no, I'm going to ring the company. Whatever. She just turns around and goes, right, fuck it, I'm gone, and she just leaves.
Yeah, she does. I don't think her character's given enough. And the same thing with the classic suit guy. It's like he's laughably corporate, a la, Russell Finley or Rob Lowe in Wayne's World.
Mitchell Beck.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and like even the stuff at the end where he ends up selling the store to Joe, it makes no sense. The whole film, he's trying to establish that I'm this corporate suit and I want to make as much money as possible. Basically, he figures out he can't work a till immediately like a fucking chimp and goes, well, I'm going to sell this to you really cheap then because I clearly don't know what I'm doing. It's so fucking lame and so poorly written and so speedily and hastily forced together for this like happy ending, which the end of the film feels like a fever dream. I'm not sure if they're going for like a fairy tale vibe where everything ends up perfect because like, it's okay. We can still make the money because we're going to have a party outside. The party is for free. They're providing the booze. I don't like all of a sudden they've got a band on the roof. I don't know how that's put together so fast. And I don't understand how it's making money.
I mean, do not fucking attack my party at the end, right?
Again, though, if you just kind of watch it as a party, like, well, that looks like a fun party. But when you stop and think about it for more than a second, you're like, wait, this also makes zero sense.
It kind of all comes from the deleted scenes. You have a scene where they're trying to redeem Rex Manning after that, where he's talking to Burko outside, and they're like, because Burko was always carrying his guitar around, and he's like, and Rex Manning's going, they wouldn't even let me play on my last 3 records, and Burko says, it's not going to happen to me, and then Rex just laughs, and you got that little redeeming thing between the two of them.
Yeah.
And then that scene at the end, that's Burko's band where they all, apparently they've done that before because they were able to know that all their music goes on that ledge. But okay, they did it. That's fine. They're all on. This is all in a deleted. This is all.
See, this is a perfect example of a deleted scene which should have been in the movie instead of one of the pointless musical montages.
Again, after Gina does her song, they bring Rex Manning back and he gets to play the guitar and they do a cover version.
That actually sounds again. I like that. The idea that it's like, you have that little hint that Rex Manning is just being, like, yes, he's a dick, but he's been worn down by a music industry, which is forgetting him. Like, he's fully aware that he's becoming this, like, jaded old man kind of thing. Because obviously, he's still fucking underage girls in, like, stockrooms and stuff. But I feel like he could have done with a bit more depth because as the film as it is, he's just like this ridiculous pantomime villain. And I just, again, don't really understand.
I mean, even to the fact of what he's wearing as a pantomime villain, mind with the... that weird shirt with the ruffles and
well, they said supposedly they're going for like a Tom Jones kind of effect, and some because you got to remember this is 95, and if his heyday was like early 80s, late 70s kind of thing, it's like guys were wearing that, or at least some of them. So it kind of makes sense.
Can we mention your favorite character, Warren, for a minute? Right?
Sure.
Do you know when he was stealing CDs? Was he using a fucking Acme magnet from Bugs Bunny?
It looked like it. I was trying to figure that out. I was like, what exactly? Is that something like really smart or something really dumb? I don't know. But I mean, I love the fact that you picked that out rather than he comes back to the store wielding a fucking piece and just waving it around at people, which Joe just lets him get away with it.
The fact he filled it with blanks means he's just going to be released. There'll be no problem. But what I want to know is, where did he get that fucking gun? Did he get that from Tackleberry?
Well, I think he got it from the same place as the Acme fucking,
magnet. Yeah.
Magnet that he was carrying around.
When he pulls the trigger was for it to pop out and go bang.
Yeah, I no, this idea that you could run into a store, even as a minor, with a gun and fire blanks and give people heart attacks and be like, yeah, oh, that's fine. You'll get out in no time at all. It's like, no, you're going to spend some time in juvie for that. 100%. He pointed that at people and pulled the fucking trigger. I don't care if there's blanks in there. You're doing time. But instead, it's like, oh, just do this guy a name tag. You'll be working here in no time. Which again lends itself to the whole Fagin Oliver thing, I think, you know?
I did love it, though, how his acting tough kind of backfired on it. It was like, stop calling me Warren. My name's not fucking Warren. And they're going, his name's not Warren. His name's not Warren. I thought his name was Warren.
I thought his name was Warren. Yeah. Again, and that's another perfect example of a scene that I found quite charming. I have these two voices in my head, and they're running all the way through the film. That this is dumb, that it's really underwritten, but I also quite like it. Like you said, it is charming, and I know right because like if you're critically poking at this film, the House of Cards falls to pieces almost immediately. But like you said, it is still entertaining. I would watch this film again because I think I'd probably enjoy it more second time round once I let the narrative go, once I stop caring about where the movie's going and just enjoy it in the moment. Because in the moment, it is often quite charming. It is often quite fun. But as a movie as a whole, again, you can see why it tanked, why it didn't kind of capture, you know, why the studio basically hung it out to dry, because it was just like, well, this film doesn't make any sense. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's annoyingly close to being a genuinely good film. You know, if you, like I said, if this was a John Hughes film, if John Hughes had written and directed this film, there's a really good film there. Or if Kevin Smith had got involved, you know, just that little bit of bite to the dialogue, just you know, a little, you know, streamline everything just a little bit. There's a good movie in here waiting to get out, but it's just a little bit too messy, sadly. And that is an understatement. A little bit too messy. It's messy as fuck.
I mean, it seems to agree with you when you look at the director, man, because the director hasn't done anything that I've heard of except for
Pump Up the Volume, which is a good film.
It's a great film.
But that's the thing, though.
But this is a great film.
No, because that is the thing, though. I don't want to shit on the director because the issue isn't the direction of this film. It's the script. It's 100%. Like, I actually think it's directed relatively well. Like you said, it captures that sense of working in a record store. I think it's a relatively decent film to look at largely. I just think the script needed another 3 or 4 looks at it, just to kind of, like I said, get rid of some of the characters, get a little bit more focus on the story you want to tell. And I know part of the point is that it's supposed to be more scattergun, but this film pushes it much too far. Like, speaking of scattergun approach, that's never exemplified more than when they do have that funeral in the back of the store. It's so weird and comes so out of the blue because they're not friends, they're not getting on, and then all of a sudden we're going to make you feel better by having a funeral for you. It's very strange. And again, Joe, you've got to step in there, buddy. You've got to draw the line somewhere, mate. It's so odd. So odd.
What was it? Fuck, I was going to say something, but I completely forgot. No, honestly.
Have I ruined it for you? I do apologize.
Totally slipped my mind.
Well, that is the thing, though. And it's hard to even, I find, to talk about this film because I end up with a scattergun approach to this film. When I looked at my notes, they're all over the shop. That's the problem.
Do you watch... When we do these films, do you watch the trailers after you watch the film?
Not always, no. And I didn't for this film.
So I like to watch the trailers. Just like to see what people would have seen back. Because obviously a lot of these films that we loved, we didn't get to watch the trailers for.
Yeah, of course.
80s, 90s, because it just didn't happen. My God, if you watch this trailer, you know the film. And it's just all over the shop. It gives you the names of the characters. It tells you what they've done, what they're going through, what they've done at the end of the film.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, though, it doesn't matter. I don't think it does.
I mean, I will say, speaking of the end of the film, I absolutely love that rooftop scene where they're all dancing. You've got the song "This Is the Day" playing. I fucking love it, mate. I think it's again.
No, it's as I said, it's weird, but I also like it.
Overused word for this episode, charming. It's so charming. It's so... But where's Burko? Why isn't Burko, who works in the store? Why isn't he up there? Because Warren's up there dancing.
Because at that point they've realised there's just too many fucking people. It's like, oh God, what are we going to have him doing? Does anyone care if Burko's not here? And I didn't even notice he wasn't up there. So the answer is no, we don't give a shit. And I think I mentioned earlier the idea that it's almost as if they're trying to force on you this almost fairy tale ending. And it kind of works, you know, that whole idea that we have all this drama, but it doesn't matter because we're young and we're just getting on with things and everything just kind of worked out. So we're all going to have a dance on top of the roof because, you know, this film needs more dancing. Again, I didn't hate the scene. It just feels like it comes out of nowhere. It's just like, well, we need to wrap this film up. Let's just have everyone dance. And it was like, all right, fair enough, because they don't know who to focus on.
Yeah.
Because they haven't focused on anyone for the whole film. So let's do a scene where everyone's there and everyone's just having a dance. It's like the end of Return of the Jedi, just without Ewoks. Everyone just has a dance. All it's missing is fucking Anakin and Obi-Wan's ghosts and Yoda hanging around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like
they're all in their early 20s doing this, right? I'm just looking. They're all born around about like the early 70s, except for Burko, who is 31 when he films this.
Well, a lot of them are actually. I think Liv Tyler was only 18, so she was like, you know, she was acting the age she was. I think a few of the others. I think Renée Zellweger was quite a bit older. I think she was 26.
Yeah, so Renée Zellweger was born in 69. This was obviously released in 95.
Yeah. So it was a weird mix. Like I think
Lucas and Deborah were both born in 72, so they were about 22, 23.
Yeah.
Ethan Embry, I haven't looked at him yet, but
I think he was around 17, 18. I think he was actually quite young.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a mix.
I still think he was great in this.
I just think he was a bit much. I appreciate it's just that kind of performance I've never been the biggest fan of, as I said, like where people really do mug to the camera and he just gurns a little bit too much for my taste. But at the same time, I wouldn't remove him from the film. I would just turn down his performance 1 or 2 notches. But then would I have felt different in like the mid-90s if I was watching this as a kid? Probably, because and that is, I think, fundamentally the reason that this film was caught on and found that kind of cult following is because, and you know, it's the same way that Friends has remained so popular, is that it has these archetypes and there's someone for you to latch onto. If you're watching this film in the first place, there's probably someone you can recognize a bit of yourself in. So, you know, you can kind of latch into, oh, I'm a bit like Lucas, or I'm a little bit like AJ, or whatever kind of thing. And I think that was one of the reasons that it became an important film for so many people. And again, despite the criticisms, I understand that. There are things to like. And if you're not watching it with too critical an eye, it's a fun little film. It's on for 90 minutes. It kind of comes and goes. Nothing really matters. That's absolutely fine. But you have all these cool characters. I just wish they would have got rid of 2 or 3 of them and kind of kept that focus on the kind of, because there's like a core 5, isn't there? There's like 5 characters who you need in this film, and then there's like 4 others who you're like, what the fuck? Just get rid of them, just lose them, and just have a bit more, you know, narrative cohesion when it comes to these 5 characters. And
does
Joe
Eddie
perhaps
work at the store?
Fuck knows. I don't know. What's his name? Who's the music guy?
Burko.
Oh, what's it? Okay, so Marco. Then there's another. There's like at least 2 characters. Or it's just like
the guy that makes the brownies is Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie. That's the guy. Eddie. He doesn't need to be in that film at all. Get rid of Eddie. Marco. They've got to go. They come into this film. I'm just like, who the fuck are you? And what is the point of view? Oh, there is no point. Get rid.
Yeah. And does Burko live in a shack out the back?
I think so.
Because they arrive. Gina and I forgot her name all of a sudden. Corey. Gina and Corey arrive, and they just yell, "Hey, Burko, time to wake up!" And he just pops his head out of a shack.
Yeah, I don't know. It comes back to that whole Joe is Fagin thing. It's just like, is he just letting anything go because he feels like a father figure to all these kids? Because even what Lucas did, like, Lucas really did fuck him over. Yeah. Totally fucked him over, regardless of whatever his weird Mr. Miyagi intentions were. You know, what he did was both mental and illegal. He should have just thrown him to the lions or at least fired him, but he just lets him get away with it. And again, the whole Lucas thing, I don't know what kind of character he's supposed to be. Like you said, is he supposed to be this like thoughtful character? They even said, and you mentioned it, they're like, oh, you weren't acting like this yesterday. What was he acting like yesterday? Is he some like cool kid? Or is he like, I at some point I'm like, is he kind of like mentally retarded a little bit?
Cool. He has a motorbike, he has yellow biking glasses, a leather jacket that he doesn't seem, and a polo neck jumper. Dude, this guy is cool.
Well, he gets his ass kicked by Joe as well. Like, that's just allowed. Joe beats the shit out of him. It's really weird.
Where did he? Do you know when the scene just before, as he notices Warren using his Acme magnet to steal CD, he takes the he takes the couch cushion with him. He sits on the stairs that has the bottom. Obviously, you know how stairs work. You go to the top of this.
I've seen a stair or two in my time.
He sits on the stairs, and then out of nowhere, presumably out of his ass, he pulls out his "I'm going to catch a shoplifter" trainers.
Yeah, I don't know where he's keeping those. I don't know where he's keeping those at all. I quite like that sequence. Yeah. The idea that it's like, oh, they're used to having shoplifters and they have this kind of process of dealing with them and stuff. I thought that was all kind of fun. But yeah, as to where he got his shoplifting trainers from, I have no idea. And it kind of turned into a cartoon for a little bit as they were chasing him.
The fact he ended up on a car, on a trailer.
Yeah, what the fuck? It reminded me a little bit of the chase sequence from Bloodsport, when it just randomly turns into like a Benny Hill sketch, but with Jean-Claude Van Damme. That's what this felt like. Again, slightly out of place, but sure. It again, in and of itself, quite fun, but I'm not sure where it belongs in the movie. Strange film. Strange, and it is. It'd be hard. It'd be hard to say if you were like writing a review for a magazine. You couldn't just give this film 4 stars and be like, "Oh, it's quite charming." You would have to be more critical, wouldn't you? I like it invites criticism at every turn by just making bizarre choice after bizarre choice. This
is one of the cases for us where nostalgia is going to win in at least one of our.
Honestly, as I was saying that, I was thinking I haven't actually put down in my notes a score for this film, and I'm still not sure. I legitimately am not sure. I was like, oh, this is going to be a 2. I was like, no, I actually quite enjoyed it. It's probably a 3, but I was like, I can't give it a 3 because it was written by a room full of fucking chimps. I was like, I have no idea. So needless to say, it's not going to be a 5-star film. I can tell you this much. But even now, I'm very much undecided on how I feel about this film. But before like I said, I wouldn't tear you down if you fuck you. I mean, if you give this film a 5-star, you can go fuck yourself. But if you give this film 4 stars because you just have an attachment to it, again, I can get on board with that.
Before we move on, did you recognize Warren, Brendan Sexton III? Did you recognize?
He looks so familiar. So familiar.
So he was the last thing I remember him doing, he was in Don't Breathe 2. He was the guy, the one who wanted to kidnap his daughter to give her, I don't know, organs or whatever to his missus.
Whatever nonsense happened in that terrible sequel,
Yeah. But, he pops up every now and then. It's just weird because I've never heard, like, he looks so similar, but also so different to how he looked back then.
Well, it was weird because he looked so familiar. I looked him up, and obviously I saw him in Donut 2 and a bunch of other films. I was like, I don't remember him in any of these things necessarily, but he's got such a distinct face that obviously whenever he just leaves a mark, like you just remember him. But I don't remember him from anything even specifically. Even when I looked at the list, I was like, well, I don't remember him seeing him in this, but I obviously have, and it's obviously had an impact because as soon as I saw him in this film, I was just like, he looks like he was probably in like 72 Offspring videos. He just has that look about him. Like, oh, he must have popped up in a bunch of things, but fuck knows. Very strange kid. But again, I don't have an issue with him personally. I mean, his character's a bit weird being in the film, but there's just not enough movie for his story. So I would still get rid of him regardless of that. Like I'm not shitting on any individual performance. I'm just like, there's just not enough room in this movie for them. So I would lose them all the same. Not because they're bad, just because there's just fucking too much. Too many kids. And it comes back to Joe. Dude, hire like 4 kids. Well, it's a record store in Delaware.
Right, I need to cut you off, right? Because you've got on and on and on. Like, you're like,
well, I keep getting angry every time. Okay, let's move on.
I'm so upset with all these kids. Have you got anything else to cover, or should we go?
No, it's good. Favorite scene.
Favorite scene.
Yeah, my favorite scene. I'm just going to get out of the way because it's going to sound bizarre because I totally shat on it. It is the last scene of this film when they're all dancing on the roof. It makes no fucking sense, but it is charming, and I did still enjoy it. And it totally summed up how I felt about this film. I was like, I really like this scene. It is also annoying the shit out of me. It's bizarre.
No, it's my favorite scene as well.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I absolutely love it. I think it's again charming. It's lovely. It's so nice. Just that and the music that they picked for it is perfect.
Well, you can see, like you mentioned at the top of the podcast, that this film was, the soundtrack did so much better than the film itself, and you can totally see why. It's just like, we mentioned earlier the fact that this feels like a time capsule. The soundtrack plays, it does a lot of the heavy lifting in that. Yeah. You just hear it and you're like, man, this just sounds like the fucking 90s, Everything about this is 90s. Although bizarrely, a lot of it, certainly from a fashion perspective, suddenly looks modern because kids are all dressing like the 90s again. It's bizarre.
Well, maybe not Mark's wearing a dummy around his neck.
That'll be back soon, dude. That'll be back soon. In terms of loves, you'll be very surprised to hear number one is Liv Tyler. You can very much blame Aerosmith and the Crazy video on this. You know, as I said, this was released in my formative years of my life. She's an absolutely gorgeous woman, but I also think she's actually quite good in this film. Still not given enough to do, but she's very good. It totally captures the energy and scattergun emotion of youth. That's both a pro and a con. But when it works in this film, I think that energy makes it actually feel maybe a bit more real than other films would. You know, I think other films can feel a bit more stagey, whereas this does have that actual link to youth. And, you know, it feels relatable because it almost doesn't make sense. Because let's be clear, when you're a teenager, nothing makes sense. Less, you know, yourself. Yes. And yeah, it made me super nostalgic for record stores in the 90s. Like, you know, obviously they weren't planning that when they made it in the 90s. It was just of the time. But going back and watching it now, it totally reminds me of, you know, going to record stores in the, you know, well, it would have been late 90s for us, I suppose. But that kind of like time and place, it totally captures that and drags you back there. And, you know, with the
it does. It makes me think of the two that we, I know we have more than two, but you had the Virgin Records store in the Capitol Arcade, but you also had the other side of town by the ice rink, MVC.
Oh, NBC. Yeah, jeez, I totally forgot about NBC.
Yeah.
I used to go there. That was my go-to place because obviously we had Spillers in Cardiff and it's still there. And that's one of the oldest record stores in the world, I think, actually. Yeah. But it was too small for it to be like a gathering place. Whereas like NBC had that total Empire Records thing. And it was corporate for sure. But because it wasn't Virgin Megastore, dude, I totally forgot about NBC. That is I don't think I would have ever remembered that place. As soon as you said it, I can just imagine walking in there, turning the corner, where all the fucking albums are. Dude, that's awesome. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, love NBC. NBC, in my mind, the very first place I got to buy Lost Boys on VHS.
It was like the Choices video versus Blockbuster on Albany Road in Cardiff. This is gonna play for such a small proportion of people, but it just had that vibe. That is so cool. But yes, yeah, very nostalgic all the same.
Right, so for me, my loves, first of all, is, you've shit on it already, but the relationships between them all. It makes me feel, because I know you said you worked in Debenhams. For me, I worked at McDonald's during after school and through college and stuff. And you have that. There's people you don't want to work with. There's people you do want to work with. But the people you don't want to work with, when you're on a shift together, all of a sudden you just get on. You realize, okay, but you get that, like, what was it, Deb and Gina thing? Oh, she hates me.
Yeah. Well, you're stuck there, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they did that really well. Whether or not you agree, then you're wrong, but I think they did it really well. I think I totally...
No, I actually said earlier, that was one of the things...
I'm also in for the relationships with Eddie. Whether or not I know if he works there, Sky is like, I just want to educate you on this. This is I made you a mixtape. It's got these kind of things, and yeah, I think the relationships between the characters is really good.
I actually agree with you, and I love those moments. I mean, my music taste fundamentally changed by somebody handing me a tape. Like back in the day, it was like somebody handed me a tape, and on one day it had Dookie by Green Day, and the other side had Colour in the Shape by Foo Fighters. Yeah. And I was already kind of like back and forth, but that just completely pushed me down a completely different path in terms of music and stuff. And that tape specifically had such a big impact. And somebody in work just handed it to me and off to the races. I liked all those little moments. And as I said, as a series of moments and relationships, I can relate to these things and I like those moments. It just doesn't work as a larger film.
I get that. I suppose. Secondly, for me, it's the Sugar High, the song that Renee Zellweger sings. Whether or not you knew she wanted to be a singer before that, the way when she's singing it and you got everybody down there really excited that she's doing something, even though probably she's going to go back to work the next day and it means nothing. I think it's really good. And randomly, lastly, I was going to say his real name and Rory. I like Lucas. I think Lucas is cool. I think Lucas is...
I just can't quite pin him down, Lucas. I like Lucas, and I'm glad you mentioned that moment. I thought it was really charming when he's like playing with the top of the head and stuff like that. But I never quite pinned down what he was supposed to be as a character.
He's trying to be like the big brother to them all.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It just never quite worked. I don't know. Like I said, I wanted to like Lucas more than I actually did because I didn't know what kind of character he was supposed to be. And you know, if you're going to make a character who's a bit more vague or a bit, you know, not so much of an archetype, I think you need to spend more time with him, which obviously this film didn't.
Yeah. Do you know what hates?
It bites off more than it can chew. That's the biggest issue. Without by a country mile. And as I said, for all my criticisms, it annoys me because I think that really good film is there, but they just try and do too much. I just think if you pare this movie back, rein it in a little bit, that great movie's waiting to come out. Again, this is totally linked to that. I just don't buy any of the romances. They're charming in the moment, but I just, like I said, specifically the whole Corey AJ thing at the end, I'm like, I don't buy into it. It was great what you said earlier, where even Corey was like, I didn't know I was in love with you. It's like a perfect moment in this film.
What's that when you fall in love with a kidnapper? What was that called?
Fuck. I was going to say Oedipus. That's when you want to fuck your mum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my God, what is it? When you fall in love with your captor. There's a Blink-182 song about it as well. Well, we'll come to it in a minute. The big one for me is like there is a total artifice to the emotions and actions, which remind me of the weaker parts of Kevin Smith's writing, rather than say like the sweeter elements of John Hughes' writing that this movie never quite captures. And that was one of the big issues. I think it's caught between the two worlds and never quite captures the kind of the cutting nature of, say, Kevin Smith's best writing or the sweeter elements of John Hughes's work. Yeah. And that was my big issue. This kind of falls into a middle ground and never quite works at either end of the spectrum, which is a bit of a shame. And as I said, well, I'm going to add in a fourth one, the fact that this wasn't written and directed by John Hughes, because that was all I kept thinking. I was just like, I wish this was a John Hughes film, but never mind. So they're my hates.
So for me, I'm going to agree with one for you, but I'm going to say the proper name because I found it. It's the Stockholm Syndrome.
Stockholm Syndrome. Thank you very much.
All of a sudden, I know he's been in love with her for ages. Then he turns around and he goes, I love you. And you would expect her to go, okay, yeah, no. So you'd expect it to go, I've always loved you. But to come to the end of it and go, I did love you. I just didn't know I loved you. But now I know I love you. I love you. Like, what?
Yeah. And you should totally, go to college here because we're obviously going to be a couple forever. We're going to get married and we're going to have kids. It's like, whoa, settle the fuck down. This is all getting a little bit heavy, guys.
And also, he quit because he's going to art school near her. Like, how did that happen in a day? Haven't you got to apply and then get accepted?
Again, this whole thing about this big decision about him quitting his job to go to art school. It's like, what? Because he glues coins to the floor and he sketches occasionally? Give me a fucking break. Like, that feels like it falls. I was like, wait, so all that stuff with him just gluing stuff to the floor was supposed to signify that he's some kind of like, art genius. I don't know.
Another Corey one for my hate is the weird obsession with Rex Manning. Of all the people you want to fuck, you've seen his Say No More, Mon Amour video, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't understand how this is the guy you want to lose your virginity. I appreciate Rex Manning probably back 20 years ago where you're looking at his pictures, but this dude now, this old wrinkly...
And it's not even that. He's clearly a slime ball. Again, she seems so sweet, so innocent. And it's just like, she just walks into a room and just takes all of her clothes off. But then when she takes off her clothes off, and makes it abundantly clear, couldn't be any more clearer that she is down to fuck.
Yeah.
When he then takes out his dick, she's like mortified. I'm like, wait, what did you think he was going to do? What did you think
she thought it was going to be
happen?
Lovely, like he was going to be sweet and innocent, and then he just goes, right, get on with it then. So I think that maybe shocked her.
I don't know, man. Yeah. It's naive beyond naivety, but never mind. Any more hates, or is that all?
No. I had a third, and it was very, very poignant. But now, once again, I fucking forgot it.
Oh, sorry, it's me rambling again. I apologize.
I should really write these down. I should have learned my lesson. We're on episode 112.
I'm amazed you don't write them down, dude. Amazed.
Usually I'm all right, but then I remember who I'm talking to, a guy that can talk forever, and I go,
yeah, dude. That was because I got the notes, man. Got the fucking notes. We'll come back to it. Do you have any alternate? Does this film have any alternate titles? It feels like it would surely just be called Empire Records.
No, it does.
Awesome.
It does, and this go one is brilliant. Right, I'll save it for the last. So Brazil, Sex, Rock, and Mess.
Well, no,
yeah,
I don't like that at all. That sounds like a weird porno. Don't care for that.
Finland, Empire Records. Go and make music.
That makes no sense. They're not making music. They're selling music.
Greece, musical pandemonium.
Terrible.
Portugal, anything goes.
Bad. I can only assume this film bombed everywhere because these terrible titles.
Hungary is my favorite. This is my final one. The Music Empire Strikes Back.
Get to fuck. Is it really called that?
Yes.
I mean, I do kind of enjoy that just for the sheer audacity of it. And it is actually better than the other ones. It's got nothing to do with the movie, but sure, why not? Let's go with the hungry one.
The music
Ridiculous.
Empire Strikes Back.
Do you have any facts?
Yeah, I got some. You got any, or do you want me to just go into it?
No, go for it, bud.
So the movie was originally filmed as 2 days, but it was cut to fit into one. So it was going to be over 2 days.
Yeah, that makes. I like it as 1 day.
Yeah. Coyote Shivers was married to Bebe Buell at the time, making him Liv Tyler's stepfather.
That is, he was Liv Tyler's stepfather. How much? I know he's older, but how much older is he? I think he's like 29.
7 years older.
Oh well, that's just insane. But you know, this is rock and roll. What can you do? It's Aerosmith.
The movie was written by a former employee of Tower Records. Some of her former co-workers still working there cited anecdotes and other elements of this movie that related to the store for a long time after the movie's release.
Well, it's got that kind of like Clerks vibe about it. It's just not as good.
Yeah. I think so. The movie was severely edited in post-production, removing 3 significant characters, up to 40 minutes of footage. The story was also condensed from occurring over 2 days to a single day, which is where that mess that you see comes from. Yeah. This film,
like it needed to be a good 20, 30 minutes longer. Like I said, it's not just it needs refinement. It needed more time to breathe. And obviously the suits have come in and they've cut this film to shreds. And it needed a bit more edge because they obviously wanted this to be a PG-13. This should have been an 18 or 15, whatever you want to call it. But it needed that little bit of edge in the dialogue, which obviously the rough edges or the sharp edges have been kind of, dulled down, sadly.
Yeah. In one of I'll start again. In one of the deleted scenes, the rooftop band is arrested and taken away, which mirrors the Beatles on top of Apple Records. Police and Warren was supposed to have a sister, but her scenes were deleted from the final cut.
It does need more characters.
Yeah. So we'll probably cover this in Legacy, but annually on April the 8th, you have a Rex Manning Day.
What's a cool thing to take from the film, and I know it's linked to Kurt Cobain's death, isn't it? Because that was the same date. Yeah. It's a weird kind of nod to that, but fair enough. But I know the whole Rex Manning Day has become a thing. I still think it's a weird thing in this film, but I guess it shows like that culture clash, and it is really kind of, I think, there to signify, oh, they're cool. You know, they are the kind of the gatekeepers now in terms of 90s music and 90s coolness, for lack of a better term. And it's like, well, this is a dude from like the 80s or the 70s, and it's like his time has come and gone. Yeah. So I get what they're going for there, but it's all of that narrative is complicated by the fact that Corey wants to fuck him, which makes no sense.
Do you ever? There was a hint. Do you know what? I'm trying to think if they hinted to it. So Rex Manning, although he was a singer, he was actually started off in the film as a television star.
I didn't get that.
He was on a television show titled The Family Way.
Did they? I think somebody nodded to that, referenced it once earlier in the film, maybe. But it feels pointless, but fine.
So the ballet dancer from the early scene, the one who's getting accosted by Mark.
Oh, getting a toes kissed, yeah.
Yeah, that's Maxwell Caulfield's stepdaughter.
Fair enough. Yeah, again, quite odd. It still doesn't make any sense that she's not wearing shoes, but fair enough.
AJ checks his pocket watch to see how much time he has left to tell Corey he loves her. The current time is showing 1:30. Corey unwittingly joins him on the roof exactly 7 minutes of runtime later. She shows up on the roof 6 minutes. So they did it at 1:37.
Fair enough. They've kept us something at least.
That's it. That's all I got.
In terms of legacy, this really was Liv Tyler's breakout movie. I mean, we mentioned the fact that she never really went on to open that many movies, but she has been in a number of absolute monsters. You know, this isn't long before Armageddon. This isn't actually all that long before Lord of the Rings, if truth be told. So, it felt like for a while she was going to be like the next big female star, and she's been in some of the biggest films ever. But obviously, she, like I said, she's never quite got to leading lady status for whatever reason.
The best film has got to be Super.
I quite like Super. I know. I'm glad she's coming back to the MCU because I've got a soft spot for the Incredible Hulk. I actually think that film's okay. I don't think it's brilliant, but I think she's quite good as Betty Ross. And I think the fact that they're bringing her back, I know obviously I don't think they swept her under the rug because they didn't like Liv Tyler. It was just complicated by the whole Edward Norton being replaced by Mark Ruffalo because he's supposed to be playing the same character and all that jazz. But, there's been about enough time now. Everyone knows what the deal is. So I'm glad she's coming back. it really is the ultimate 90s nostalgia trip. You know, these films, I think that's the legacy of it. It's like people are like, oh, you know, this is what it was like back in the 90s. You worked in a record store. And whether that's true or not, it's like, this is what you would show people. I would say that it is a cult movie that should arguably be left in a box next to your rose-tinted glasses to many respects. That sounds a bit harsh because, as I said, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, you know, as long as you're willing to just kind of enjoy it for the moments, there's still a lot to enjoy in this film. So I think that's the reason why people are quite happy to go back to it. And I don't know. I guess the other one for me, and sorry to bring it back to Liv Tyler, is that for a lot of people, they think of it as a Liv Tyler movie, but it isn't a Liv Tyler movie. I know that's a weird legacy to have for this, but I think because of her place on the poster, because she, you know, when you look at those other, because Renée Zellweger's in this, and she's obviously ended up being the bigger name, but she's kind of tucked away on the edge of the poster. And I think almost a lot of people forget that Renée Zellweger's in this film. So people just think of it as, oh, this is a Liv Tyler film. And then you go back and watch it, it's like, it's not. It's the ultimate ensemble movie, to the point where there isn't a lead in this film at all. It's quite bizarre.
I remember my third hate.
Go for it.
The fact you won't shut up about fucking Liv Tyler. No, I'm joking. Jesus Christ, dude.
Dude, you can't not talk about this film and talk about her. I just think it's kind of intrinsically.
No, apparently you can't.
Well, like I said, for me though, that was because I don't have this attachment to this film. That's what I remember about this film. So I just found it bizarre that she's just not the star, that she's so prominent on the poster, but it's not her movie. I honestly think it should be more like, you know, like you mentioned in the trailer, the fact that they mention all the names. That's what they should have gone with. It should have almost been like a lineup of them with their names and been like, oh, these are the characters, these are the archetypes, and you'll find something to latch onto. Because narratively, that's what this film is doing. It's not pushing anyone front and center. It's saying, oh, you'll find something to connect to in this film because there's so many things going on. And nobody's given prominence over anybody else. And I think that's what they should have done, except for with the poster, which tells you a completely different story. But that's what it is.
Sure, I'd really like to see the 40 minutes that were cut in this to make
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, Tobey Maguire was in this movie. But
but he's not actually in the film, is he?
No, because they cut his sscenes again, one of the 40 minutes. He asked to have his scenes cut because he was going through drug and alcohol problems at the time, and I don't know. He thought that was evident on screen, so he asked for them to be cut. And fair play to him. I mean, they whether they said to appease him, yes, or whether they said, to be fair, your acting was shit anyway, so we'll cut you. I'm not.
Well, he's a good actor, you know. So, and again, there's some good performance in this film. I genuinely like the cast, but not necessarily all the characters, if that makes sense. But that's absolutely fine. In terms of score and soundtrack, we've obviously mentioned a lot already in terms of how it was so much bigger than the movie itself. Bizarrely, only 16 of the 50 tracks or so that are used in this film are actually on the soundtrack.
And so, and to be fair, I think they did the 16 that they chose of the 50, there was a lot that they admitted that they shouldn't have.
Oh, 100%. There was a lot, because I was looking specifically at the soundtrack, and I was like, wait, where's this song? Like, it feels like 2 or 3 of what I would consider to be the biggest songs in the movie are completely omitted from the soundtrack. And I'm not sure if it's a right thing, but it's still a really good compilation, the 16 that are on the soundtrack. But there are some bizarre omissions. Bizarre. But there are some, you know, cool tracks like the brilliantly named Ass Ponies singing the equally brilliantly named Little Bastard. There's, you know, AC/DC and Dire Straits you already mentioned. Like, none of these are actually on the soundtrack, but they're using the film. But, you know, there's still some, you know, belters on the soundtrack alongside that. There's like the Cranberries, Gin Blossoms, Toad and the Wet Sprocket. Is that it? Toad and the Wet Sprocket?
Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Yeah. Sorry, I do apologize. But as I say, it still feels like a bit like, even if you take away the fact that, you know, some of the better songs aren't on the soundtrack as a whole, I still feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity. You think about some of the bands at the time and the vibe they're going for. It's like, could they not get the Pixies? Could they not get the Smashing Pumpkins? All the way through this film, I keep expecting that kind of band to show up, but it never quite happens. But I don't want to be overly critical because the soundtrack still absolutely slays. So, you know, I just think it was maybe missing that true belter of a song. I think if you get like Bone Machine by fucking the Pixies in this film, I just think that absolutely brings the house down. Unless, of course, no, Bone Machine was released before 95. It's absolutely fine. Anything else to add to the score soundtrack? I know the whole podcast has been kind of a, you know.
No, not for me. Like I said, as I've said, I think it's a great soundtrack. The whole, like, as you've already said, not just the 16 that were on there, but the whole soundtrack, I think it was absolutely fucking fantastic. And it always brings me back to the 90s and although not my music choice, a lot of them, they're songs that I would listen to for nostalgia reasons over and over again because of this film.
Yeah. Well, it is my kind of style of music. I mean, I was maybe a bit more rock than some of the kind of indie stuff in this, but it's, like you said, it totally brings you back to the 90s.
Yeah.
It's a massive part of the nostalgia for this film.
I do think the fact that they omitted Seems by Queen Sarah Saturday and Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles is...
Oh, yeah, that's another weird one. Those are great examples of songs where you just think, oh, well, that would have an impact in this film. But
yeah,
maybe they wanted to keep it more 90s centric. It was Video Killed the Radio Star. Was that 80s?
Well, yeah, that was the very first music video ever, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I can kind of see why they dropped that, but whatever. In terms of video games, I'd probably go for like a business management game, but one with drug-addled teens, attempted suicide, sex with minors, but one punctuated by surprise musical numbers that make no sense, but make you forget about all the, the weird sex and dark stuff in the background. So I'm thinking like Theme Hospital crossed with Hatsune Miku. I know a lot of that won't make sense to you, but that's what I would go for. Either that, or I'd go with the visual novel style of Coffee Talk by I think it's Toge Productions or Toge Productions, I'm not sure how I pronounce it, where everybody has enjoyably intense conversations while folk buy cool 90s CDs. I think that would quite work as well, but one or the other.
For me, because I'm not really playing games where nothing happens, so I
would go with God of War, but you buy CDs.
But done by Naughty Dog. No, yeah. It'd be a Sims game, wouldn't it?
I think so, but like I said, I went to the visual novel because I played that game Coffee Talk, which is a really interesting kind of like indie game where you have like a bunch of surreal characters just interacting in a coffee store. And I'm like, well, that's kind of the vibe they're going for there. So it's just like, do I need the interactions? Do I need them to have to do all this stuff? It's just like, no, just have like a bunch of characters talking to each other where you make the narrative choices for them. And I was like, maybe that would work better for this film. It's like, because you could kind of go a little bit deeper with all the characters, spend a bit more time with them. I would actually quite like to play a visual novel game about the store and about those characters in the build up to this, maybe. Where nothing really matters. It doesn't even have like any kind of closure. You're just spending time with them. I think that'd be kind of cool.
I would do Virtua Fighter where you get Corey and Gina just going at each other.
Yeah, that'd be quite good. I mean, that wouldn't be far from what happened in this film, man. Corey, I know I've gone about Liv Tyler a few times, but Corey is such a dick in that part of the film. She's such a dick. Like, she absolutely slut-shames Gina for, like, no apparent reason. I know she's having her own problems, but the way she turns on her so quickly is so out of character and so fucking harsh that it genuinely annoyed me.
When Gina pulls out as well, the speed that she's taking. That's insane.
Oh yeah, going about the amount of speed. I mean, she's like, and that is the thing. When you stop and think about it, these kids have genuine problems. Like Corey is doing a shitload of speed. Like Gina is really much more promiscuous than she should be. And I'm not being slut shame or anything like that. Just the fact is she shouldn't be having sex with Rex Manning. I don't care what anyone says if she's a teenager. And then you've got a dude who apparently lives in the record store because he's homeless. And another and AJ has got a fucking mortgage at 18 apparently while trying to go to art school. There are a lot of issues going in this film which are just quite happily swept under the rug. Yeah. But I guess that would make it a very different film. So to the interesting matter of scores and recommendations. Do you want to go first?
Yeah,
go first, buddy.
I would recommend it. I still think it's a great film. I recommend it as like just you get a slice of 90s nostalgia. I think it's great. I would I want to see the uncut 40 minutes where it's over 2 days and you get plot threads that just don't end like they do in this. Then yes, definitely. But I still think it's a great film. I still recommend it. And you've already threatened me with a 5, so I'm going to give it a 4 for me.
Yeah, I would be genuinely surprised if you gave this film a 5.
No, it's not a 5. But I mean, it's one of those ones where it should be a 3.5, but for some reason, because of nostalgia, it's pushing up to a 4 for me. I think it's great.
No, I totally get that. And as I said, I've kind of gone back and forth on this film, and even with the whole recommendation thing, because it's a film which has so many issues, but one that's still fun. And I think the fact that, it is just, 90 minutes long, like, if you have, I'm not just going to say someone on my team, like I go into work and someone's like, oh, I'm quite into films. I'm like 30 years old. I'm like, if you don't have an attachment to the 90s, I don't think you go back and watch this. I think you need to be in your late 30s, early 40s, whatever. Have that attachment to the time, and then in that case, you can enjoy it as like a ridiculous time capsule. I've gone back and forth between 2 and 3 stars. I'm actually going to go with 3 stars because, as I said, despite all the issues, despite the fact that for an hour and a half I've shat on it, I did quite enjoy this film. But it does come with that caveat that it is a mess of a movie. Yeah. We've used that word too, as much as I've used the word, going back to Liv Tyler, we have used the word charming a lot, but it is that intangible sense of something. Some films, they're really well made, but they just don't have any charm. Yeah. This film is quite poorly made, but it's really fucking charming. And that's what fundamentally won me over at the end. Like I said, my favorite scene was the scene on the roof. This part of me is telling me, it's like, well, this is dumb. It doesn't make any sense. The other part of me is saying, shut the fuck up. I don't care. This is just fun. And I like the characters. So yes, I'm recommending it with caveats, and I'm going to give it 3 stars.
When scoring or recommending, I always think to myself, would I go back and rewatch this film? Now, with last week's Return of the Jedi, I wouldn't. I would never go back and watch it myself. So why would I put that on other people? That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So, but I would go back and watch this again. So for me, if I'm going to go back and watch it, then it's a higher praise in my opinion. So it gets a bigger score. But then you have to look at the fact of, well, there are caveats. It is a mess with some of these things. So you can never give it, just because I love her and I'll go back, it's not a 5. But
no,
if I would go back and watch it again, then I would recommend it. So that's the way I see it. But there are the ones, like you wouldn't really go and recommend Buckaroo Banzai to people.
No, well, I always try and think about like how much of it is kind of linked to nostalgia, how much of it's kind of caught up in the whole like, I'm quote unquote, without sounding douchey, like a film fan. So like Buckaroo Banzai, if you want to use that as an example, it really is so incredibly niche that we have such this specific kind of taste in movies where you're like, basically, if I'd seen Buckaroo Banzai, the only person I'd really recommend to is you. That is literally it. And maybe my brother. Like, I actually told my brother to go watch it. But even then, I wasn't sure if he would like it. But I wouldn't just go kind of telling anybody. But whereas this, a lot of the stuff is straight down Main Street. And, for all the fact that it doesn't have that bite, it does make it, again, very watchable to just about anyone. Like, I think most people, as long as you have some kind of nostalgia for the time, there's something you can latch onto. And again, it comes back to the characters. Yeah, they're all underwritten and underdeveloped, but they do have those clear templates almost that they're working from. So there's something for you to latch onto, which I think is important for this film. And the reason that it's lived on despite the terrible box office. And it was fucking terrible.
Yeah, it was awful. I mean,
bombed so hard.
It's never really recouped. But to be fair, again, I think it's a great film and I'm glad we got to cover it. But
yeah.
I mean, that does end Empire Records for us. So I'm quite intrigued now of what we're going to do next week. So it's your choice. Are you gonna stick to the 90s? We're going back to the 80s? What are we doing?
No, it is a 90s film, and this one's more. It's basically just an excuse for me to go back and rewatch it because I'm not sure how I feel about this film. I kind of want to find out. So we're going to go back and watch Steven Spielberg's Hook. I'm a massive Spielberg fan, but I wasn't a big fan of Hook when it came out. But it's one of these strange ones. The more I talk to people about it, a lot of people have. Feel really strongly about this film, and then you go and look at the box office. Like, well, this film is actually a hit. But I don't think it's kind of held in particularly high regard. Certainly, maybe it's all relative because we're comparing it to Spielberg's other work. But I watched randomly like 10 minutes of Hook a few weeks ago, and I was like, wait, this is fucking good. And I didn't have the time to kind of stick with it. And I decided, I was like, well, it makes sense that we do it for the podcast if I want to watch the whole film again. But that was the point. I watched 10 minutes, like, I really want to go back and revisit this film. And I have no idea how I'm going to feel about it nowadays. And I'm not even sure how I felt about it when I was younger.
This is an interesting one because I'm with you because I wasn't a massive fan of this.
Yeah, but I also didn't hate it. I can't remember how I felt about it. That's the weirdest thing. I was completely
indifferent. I wasn't a massive fan. I watched it more than once. So it'll be interesting to go back now and see if anything clicks with me. I mean, the only thing I can really remember from this is Looky, Looky, I Got Hooky.
Well, that's one of the things, like Dustin Hoffman's performance and the stuff with him and Smee, that was the bit I saw. And I found it so fucking charming where he's pretending to kill himself. And just to warn you, that's going to be the opening quote next week. I was like, this is really good stuff. But I was like, is it like the rest of the film is too schmaltzy and maybe like, because obviously they really lean into physical effects. And this was a really expensive movie and it looks so lavish. And I was like, I assume at least on a visual level, most of the stuff's going to hold up. And obviously Robin Williams is this beloved actor, but he also made a few too many overtly schmaltzy films in like the late 90s. Yeah, so it's like, is that part of that rather than, the Robin Williams that I grew up loving? I again can't really remember. So we'll find out next week, I guess.
I think what might hinder this film for me is the fact that they rein Robin Williams in. The best Robin Williams performance you get is when you let him just go for it. But I don't think you get that with this. But again, we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. But yeah, this has been Empire Records. Thanks for listening as always. And do join us next week for Hook, where we have no idea how we feel about this film. So we'll find out next week. But thanks as always for listening, guys. Cheers.
Yep, this has been the Liv Tyler podcast with Liam. And next week, we're going to do the Julia Roberts podcast with Liam. And we'll see you next week.
Dude, I actually grew up with a massive crush on Julia Roberts as well. So that's going to be an issue as well.
I knew it.
I've just got a type. What can I say?
Cheers, guys. We'll see you next week.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. We're also on email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Hey, you guys!